Welcome to the Vent. I'm so excited. We are live. It's Tuesday. Last week, we were not live on camera, but we were live in our Vent vestibule. And that was so exciting. We got to talk and have a safe space to process some things that were going on with the presidential debate. We got to laugh a little bit. We got to do a couple side eyes. We got to, in community, talk about what was happening in real time. So that was exciting. This week, we are continuing our series on collaboration. So this week, we'll be talking about collab, right? So welcome into the Vent Lab. We'll be talking about how we can pull in diverse gifts, skills, interests, people from diverse sectors, no matter what your vocation is, no matter what things look like around you, different economic statuses, how we can come together and really collaborate, and how collaboration really can make a difference. And of course, we will be recapping the Vent ATL. We had a great time. Our panelists were amazing. And we just enjoyed a great time of speaking in safe space. And our focus was relationships as you go through different life stages. So, friendships at a younger age versus when you may get into the workforce, go to college, how things shift, time changes, you have children, you get married, you move out of state. You got to figure out how to make friends as an adult. You get married, you figure out how to continue to go to relationship. You grow friendships, you lose friendships, things shift. So we kind of talked about that from a very practical and spiritual standpoint, as well as how even though we come from different backgrounds, we all often have this commonality that we share. And we all seek safe spaces. We all seek relationship, whether it be romantic, whether it be platonic, whether it be in a work environment, in a ministry environment. We all value relationship in some way. And you just can't do life alone. Like, you can try and you probably can get through. But the way you can really thrive in life, and the way that we really reach those places and those goals, often is through our connection to other people, right? One way it's said is that your network is your net worth, right? We've had a whole event about that. But also, like, you're a sum of all the people around you, right? All that is like math, right? I've been doing math all week. All that is about multiplying and growing and adding things together that often do not look alike, right? Even if you think about the people that you know, many of you have commonalities, but you also have things that make you distinctly different. And that is the beauty in it all. So welcome into the Vent. I'm excited that you're here. I'm excited for the people that are coming in. I'm excited for the people that are here every week. I'm excited for the people that's peeking in like, hey, what you got going on over here? I'm excited to share space, to share time, to share interests, to share ideas, to share everything with you. So, hey, Wayne. Hey, Shop Drop Thrifts. So the first thing I want to do, because this is something that maybe I don't do all the time, but I want to kind of share a little bit about the Vent, and then I want to give you a recap, and then I want to talk about collab. So we're just going to do three things, all right? So first of all, if this is your first time here, if you've been here a while, if you're just dropping in, if somebody else invited you in, welcome. The Vent is a community conversation. So while you may see me on screen, everybody's voice is valued here. So we want to hear from your experience, from your expertise, from your perspective, your viewpoint, where you are, what you got going on, and what you can add to the conversation. And we do that through the comments. You can do that. Often we have people come in, we have like a guest come on, and our in-person, we all speak audibly, right? We have a moment where if you don't want to say something out loud, you can drop your question or your comment in the box, here online. Feel free to add to the conversation however you see fit in the comment section. We want you to this is a group project, right? This is a group conversation. We're all about community. So the purpose of the Vent, or why the Vent exists, is to provide safe spaces for people to have conversations that they may not be able to have anywhere else. So whatever life circumstances, whatever has happened, whatever, wherever you may be, whether you moved away from family or you just don't have a safe space, or you don't feel comfortable talking in certain settings, the vent is a no judgment zone where whatever it there's nothing that you can say that's too outrageous. There's nothing that you can ask that won't make sense. We are here to glean from one another as well as to share in this space, because you never know what you've been through may help someone else. And we often know that, and this is part of our conversation from Saturday, we often compartmentalize our life. So, like, the spiritual part of me is over here, the work part of me is over here, the fun part of me is over here, but we are one whole person. So, your spiritual, mental, emotional, physical is wrapped up in one body. So, why not be able to explore that in one space instead of trying to compartmentalize who you are? Show up here. The vent is this place you can show up and just be, right? Let your hair down, kick your shoes off, just be. And even if you don't want to add audibly or in the comments to the conversation, feel free to just take what you need, right? Take what you need, chew on it, take it to somebody else, or keep it for yourself. Also, one of the things we do, because everybody is a piece of our community, we have these vent blocks and we actually write on them. I don't have one that's written on. This is just an example. But one thing we do with all our in-person events, and no matter where you are, we can mail these to you as well. We write down either what you get from the vent community or what you want to bring to the community. And what we do is, like, these are like Jenga pieces. So when we all get together, we build these up, because you can't build with just one piece. You need all the pieces, and all of us bring something, right? Whether it's encouragement, whether it's talent, whether you bring the laughs, whether you bring a smile, whatever it is, peace to someone, all of us bring something to the vent. So thank you for bringing whatever it is that you bring. We need it, we value it, and we're so happy that you're a part of our community. So let's recap Saturday. Saturday was amazing. If you don't know, we went to Atlanta this Saturday, and one of the things that we have tried to do more often now, we started online in 2021. So we started online in 2021, and we've been going strong. And now we are starting to go out and meet people where they are, right? So one of the places, we've hosted a few in-person socials in Suffolk, and now we are going to where the people are. So we went to Atlanta. We have a group in Atlanta that we are growing. So we're gonna have a vent hub. Our goal is to have a vent hub up and running on its own in Atlanta. So our Atlanta conversation was centered around relationships. So relationships has been like a hot topic at the event. I think we started off with one night, what was it, like 2 years ago? And then we went into like four segments, and then it was like two more segments after that. And then we took a break and we came back and we did relationships again, because all of us deal with other people. And that's why we in the lab. We are collabing. We are in the lab tonight. And this is kind of like a shoot off from Saturday. So we had an amazing panel. I know you probably hear or see Aggie Chapin here. He and his wife Janessa were on our panel. We had my friend Sharon from Hampton. She was on the panel. We had my mom on the panel. And we also had one of our board members' brothers-in-law. He was also on the panel. So even with that, nobody knew each other, right? Nobody got to talk before. And the conversation just really flowed. And it was really good, because we had one couple that had been married right out of college. And then we had another gentleman that he got married when he was 40. He's been married for 20 years now. So we have these different perspectives. We have someone who's been divorced before. We have someone who's single, never married. We have people that have children. We have people that don't have children. People raise stepchildren. We had all these different voices, and not just from the panel, but from the participants and the people that came in, also sharing their stories, sharing things that they have been through, sharing their experiences. So it really made for a space where I always ask for feedback, right? Because it's no need to do it if no one was impacted. So one of the participants for the event this week said that, I'm so happy we had this conversation, because I've never been able to talk about this specifically. One of the things we talked about was even relationships with the church and how people have been hurt before in the church. And that person in particular said they had never been able to talk about that before and felt like free enough to actually say these things. But because a couple other people shared their testimonies and experiences they had, this person felt like, oh, I can do this now. And they just kept talking about it. And I was like, yes, yes, yes. That is the goal. Like, have the conversation, work through it, get healthy, holistic advice, but also know that you're not alone. Like, even no matter what kind of relationship you be in, y'all raise your hand or raise your hand in the comments or something. No matter what kind of relationship that you have been in, we've all experienced hurt or disappointment or some type of rejection at some point in life, right? It could have been a romantic relationship, or you didn't get the job, or, you know, the friendship ended, or you were disappointed by something else, or even disappointment within ourselves, right? So how do we take care of ourselves? How do we manage our relationships with others and self? What does that look like? What does it look like when my relationship may not be the best with the church or church leaders? What does that look like, and how do I navigate that? And let's talk about it and be real, and not like super like, oh, nothing bothers me, I'm good. No, your feelings got hurt, and that's okay. We've been there. Let's talk about it. Let's be honest, right? So that was the vent. If you have any questions, if you have anything that you want to share, because even though we won't talk necessarily directly about the vent, I'll continue to reference it throughout this conversation. But also, like, I want us to really share our experiences through collaboration, whether that be on a work level, family level, friend level, because we all come in contact. Even if you work from home, you come in contact with other people, whether it's on the screen, in person, on a call. You gotta talk to somebody else, and collaboration often is the key for us to open doors that we never thought would be possible to open. So we're gonna use in our lab tonight. I'm excited. I bet y'all probably can tell I'm excited, because I'm gonna calm down and then I'm gonna ask y'all a question, because I want to hear from you for sure. But in our lab tonight, we are going to use some imagination. We're going to use some practicality, and we're going to talk about some things that exist now and how we can reinvent those things. So put on your imagination caps, but also, like, I think that one of the big things with collaboration is you create things that did not exist before because you have more resources, right? And we're going to get into that more in detail, but I'm excited because I love working with other people, right? For some people, group projects, you like, I ain't doing no group project. I don't want to work with nobody, because y'all know every time you do something, hey, Tony, every time you do something in a group, it is almost guaranteed there's going to be at least one person that does not hold their weight. But tonight in the vent lab, everybody holds their weight. Everybody's voice is heard. Everybody has something to contribute, even if they're just the person that's pushing everybody else forward and encouraging everybody else. That we need that person too. But because we always need tension, right? But you know there's somebody that don't do what they're supposed to do. But we're going to encourage them tonight to be a part of the group, and to bring what they have, whatever that is. We value it, and we're glad you're here. So let's hop into it. Thank you. Hey, Mom. So the first thing I want to ask you, so we can get into our imagination and to some life experiences that we've had. The first question I would love for you guys to answer is, who in your life has inspired you to work for and dream towards freedom? Again, I told you we use an imagination. When you talk about collaborations, right? We're talking about different entities, different people, different things coming together to do something new, right? It's like Angel Reese, right? Creating sneakers. It is like Simone Biles doing her own thing, but she's also part of a collaborative Olympic team, right? She the GOAT, but she's also part of a team, right? So her team sports, she couldn't do that without them the same way they couldn't do it without her, right? So we're talking about like the dream team, right? We are talking about, like, I used to love Sonny and Cher. So we're talking about, I love music, right? We're talking about the collabs that, like, Rick James. We talking Fire and Desire, right? These things that if these two things didn't come together, it just wouldn't be the same, right? That's what we're talking. We're talking about Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5. Things that go together and you just would not have it any other way. Like, Michael could have sung them songs by himself. He had a great solo career, but you know when Christmas come around, you are listening to the Jackson 5. You're not just listening to Michael Jackson. So we're talking about even people who in things that appear to do things solo have a whole team that has collaborated to make these things happen. Right? So who in your life has inspired you to work for and dream towards freedom? This could be a mentor, and you can put in, I would love for you to drop it in the comments. It could be a mentor, it could be a supervisor, it could be a family member, it could be a celebrity or a business mogul or someone that you follow and you're like, you know what? That person is inspiring to me, because even if when I see all the things they went through and they still held their head high, right? It could be a single mother, it could be a single father, it could be someone who overcame a sickness, it could be anybody that's inspired you. You know what? I can do this, because and what has really inspired me is this person, right? My mom said her parents, yeah, your parents, because you see them, and often with our parents, excuse me, and many family members, we see them through the process. Like we might not know all the details, but we see them when they first start something. We see them going through the trials of trying to figure out how this is going to work out. And then we see them in the success and the maintaining of that. And we're going to talk about maintaining things, but we see them through each stage. So it's like, wow, I remember when this was just an idea in your mind, right? Like Oprah, right? We saw Oprah as like a newscaster. We learned later, if we didn't know in real time, Oprah got like fired, right? Then we see Oprah with her own show going on for years and years where she had guests. And then we see Oprah like giving away like cars and trips and stuff. Then we see Oprah owning a whole network, her own network, right? Oprah Winfrey Network. We see these things and it's like, wow, how in the world, right? We see these people overcome things, right? And even going back to Simone Biles, we see her have take her mental health very seriously and do what she need to do for herself. And then we see her come back the next year and beat all the odds and do all these things, right? We see these people and they inspire us, whether they're close or they're far. They're inspiration to us, right? One of the things we also talked about was we talked a lot about scripture this Saturday as well, and we see often many of us value people and look up to people in the Bible, right? We see them go through these trials, we see them go through these things, and then we see them overcome, and it's like, man, right? It almost seems unreal sometimes. Alethea, hey Alethea, she said seeing other single mothers overcome adversary. Absolutely. It is like we could go on all day about how we see other people go through things and still hold their head up high, see them still pushing forward, see them still going through their and pushing for them for their dreams. Seeing people be told no, right? Like people being told no and still moving forward. Like somebody gonna say yes. I will never forget this. And I don't know if Kim Walker Lee's up here because I can see how many people are up here, but I can't see exactly who is up here unless you comment. But one of the people that I look up to that inspires me is Miss Kim Walker Lee. And one thing she said when we were at some event, she was like, no means next opportunity, right? So you may have told me no, but I'm going to get a yes somewhere. Right? Like somebody's going to say yes, even though you said no. And that's where the imagination comes, right? And that's where the inspiration is. And okay, the no is here, but that's not the end. Right. So thank y'all for sharing it. Miss Rosa said her mom inspired her. And again, often we see like people see our moms in one way, but we get to see them through the whole, or we see much of their journey and we remember those things. So I hope that is a good shout out to the moms out here and the parents out here, like that may think that they're not doing or they wish they could do more. Your kids see you and they see you striving and overcoming and pushing forward. And even if they don't understand it all the time, when they get older, it'll click. And they're like, man, my mom was doing all of this while also going to school, while also working, while also taking care of us, while also they can remember it, even if it doesn't seem like it sticks now. They remember those things and they take those lessons, even if they're not telling you all the time. They got it. So the next part, as we talk about that, as we talk about inspiration, and I told y'all one of the big part of our discussion is coming from this book by Dr. Andrew Wilkes, and it's Plenty Good Room, and it talks about co-creating. This speaks directly to co-creating an economy for all, and it speaks a lot about Black socialism. But one of the things I want to pull out is from a couple chapters in the book where it talks about how we collaborate and bring things together. That's why we're in the lab, right? You know, in the lab, you mix things together, you make something different. How you do science experiments and you put the baking soda and the vinegar and things happen when you mix things together. So just again, using imagination, using your life experiences, thinking about all the things you see. We have a presidential election coming up, mayoral races, all these different races that are coming up, excuse me, or that have been have taken place recently, and or are upcoming. What could be created by combining these three things? So think about, these are our ingredients in the lab tonight. We have faith, justice, and inclusion. Again, often these things are separated out, where we can talk about our faith, but we don't want to mix it with politics. Or we can talk about inclusion, but I don't know how much justice is going to be involved in that, right? So when you think about faith, you think about your faith, other people's faith, whatever faith means to you. Think about justice, and you think about inclusion. What kind of world, or what things that we could create? Think about your children, think about the single mothers, think about the parents, think about people who are striving to do better. Think about the voices that often aren't brought to the table, right? The people who don't have the money to be there, the people who are working so they don't have the time to participate all the time. If we put together faith, justice, and inclusion, what are some things that you think that we could create? What are some things we could collaborate on? What are some things that we could change? Like, think about your community. What are some things, if you put your faith, justice, and inclusion together, or any combination of the three or the two or one, what are some things that we could create? And I ask this question because one of the things, just as an example, one of the things that I often go back to is the civil rights movement, right? This is the civil rights movement, the March on Washington, the Montgomery bus boycott. They're all examples of combining these two things. The Freedom Riders, they're all examples, because when you think about all those things, one, often churches, faith, and it's not just Black churches, is um Jewish people, it is people of different faith systems came together to make these things happen. It was a collaborative effort, right? It wasn't just one denomination or one faith system. When you think about justice, people trying to gain rights, trying to get the right to vote, the Million Man March, excuse me, or the March on Washington wasn't just about one thing. It was about civil rights. So it was about workers. It was about getting different rights to different groups and types of people. That's the inclusion, right? So we need justice, not for just this segmented group, but we need justice for all these people that often aren't considered the working class, right? People of color, women, people of different faith systems, people who live in a certain economic space, people with different zip codes, right? People who aren't in legislative offices, people who are not the decision makers, they also need to be included, right? So if you think about that in your neighborhood, right, what parts could be revived, right? What services and systems could come back? What after school programs could possibly be back in? And another thing I think about is the Black Panthers. Right. There were so many instances where things weren't being provided by the government. So the Black Panthers set up breakfast programs so kids could eat. They set up neighborhood clinics because they didn't have clinics in the area. They set up all these things because that was a mix of faith, justice, and inclusion. We included the kids in this. We included the mothers in this. We included the women who may not be able to work at a different hospital. They can come here and make sure our children have their shots and have the things that they need. And while it was a political thing, it was also very faith-based and involved inclusion, because it didn't just include one group of people. It included groups of people that came together. I hope I'm making sense. This makes sense to y'all? What y'all thinking? Because we often separate, right? So Black Panthers over here, church over here, really they together, right? Freedom riders together, civil rights movement, faith together. Women's rights when it came to Black women getting rights and people of color getting rights together. The many of those spaces, the driving force behind it were faith-based organizations that partner with lawyers and college students. These are all people coming together from different groups and different backgrounds because they knew that they wanted to make a change, and the only way to do that was to collab. Martin Luther King was talking to President Johnson. Totally different backgrounds, right? Totally different lives, totally different types of privilege, totally different, probably in every way possible, besides them both being men. And change was happening, and change happened, right? So that I just really want to push that because we often compartmentalize different parts of us. We often, don't want to talk about politics and faith spaces and religious institutions, but they actually go hand in hand. Even and many people bring the Bible in. Even bringing the Bible in, they still go hand in hand. So we want to talk about it, whether that's for a positive, whether you lean into a positive side or a negative side, it still goes hand in hand. So we do ourselves a disservice when we take education and politics out of faith. We do ourselves a disservice when we take justice and we want it in political spaces, but we don't want justice in our religious spaces, right? We do ourselves a disservice when we want rights in one space, but then we want to put other people down in another space. You can't, it's hard for us to pick and choose. Oh, like women can be, senators, but president is a little too far, right? Or women, I'm a chaplain, right? So one of my coworkers, and I won't name him because, hey, Rachel, I won't name him. But one of my coworkers was like, we let the women at our church teach, but I don't know about women. Like the Bible says there can't be women pastors, and I'm like that. It's just really hard for me to comprehend how we want freedom in certain spaces, but not in other spaces. Right? It may be me. I don't know, but it's hard for me to comprehend how we pick and choose versus it being inclusive across the board, right? And it's some other comments that I would make, but I'll hold on to those for now, because I'm always here for roughing a little feather. But I just want us to just think about how we pick and choose sometimes based on our preference versus based on what is good for us all versus what is good and comfortable for me, because we run the risk of becoming just like the people that we stand against when we start picking and choosing. So we fight for rights, but I'm fighting for rights for a certain group of people, not everybody. So we kind of become like the things that we're fighting against. So I struggle with that sometimes in certain spaces. Okay, Ms. Rosa said it makes sense to her. Okay. Lethea said if you separate people with focus on color, there will never be a change. Get rid of the distraction. Absolutely. So we can't fight for civil rights without understanding that civil rights apply across the board. It's not just a certain section. Like it's not just for people of color. It's civil rights for all, like humanity. Right? Civil rights are for. Yep. So that is one big thing for me, for us to kind of challenge ourselves and challenge, if you're there, challenge the people around you, because we often, I'm fighting for this, but we sometimes leave out certain groups of people even in that, and we do not. I'm gonna say it again and again. We do not want to become the very thing that we're fighting against. So the next thing, or the thing that we're trying to prevent, we don't want to become that, because we just create another problem instead of providing a solution. So one of the in the book, again, this is a really great book. It talks about socialism, Black socialism. It talks about creating an economy with enough for all, and how we often, capitalism leans us toward, like a few having much, but collaborative and cooperative economics leans to how can we help everyone get to where they need to be, right? And where it may not be a perfect system, it is a system that can benefit more than just us saving certain things for certain groups. So one of the quotes that's really stood out to me was, justice isn't just about redistributing resources. It's about redistributing power and influence, right? So let's say we redistribute something, right? So you have, if I have, here we go. I got a bag of Skittles, right? And I give half the bag to my daughter. I keep half the bag, right? And then I decide, you know what, Kristen, we need to share with Alethea and Miss Rosa. We have 4 people with resources, but at the end of the day, I'm still the person with all the power and influence, right? Justice becomes me saying, okay, guys, what is the best way, or us collaboratively coming together, right? What is the best way for us to distribute this? Kristen is 12. She may not need a half a bag, right? Someone else may not have a sweet tooth, so they don't want it. How you think the best way, right? And I know this is just Skittles, but what's the best way for us to distribute these resources as a group, right? So me up here making, let's say I'm at the top of the hierarchy, right? Me up here making all the decisions without even inviting other voices in, I'm probably not going to make an informed decision, right? But if I invite other people in and I hear where they're coming from and what their needs are, I might be giving Skittles to somebody that don't need it, while there's somebody that does need it that's struggling. And maybe Skittles isn't the best one, but man, let's say this is a bottle of water. I may be giving somebody water whose cup is already full, but then there's someone else whose cup is empty and they're not getting it because I'm here and I have no viewpoint of what's going on. So the redistribution is, how can we bring, when we're talking government, right? I moved back into government. When we're talking government, how can we bring the working class into decision making? How can we bring the people who are often overlooked into the decision making? Because they're the ones that's affected. Oh, right. Um how do we bring in the people who are going to be affected by the decisions into the conversation? Right? One of the things the book also talks about is we know for the most part, my daughter's in civics this year. And we have a representative democracy, meaning people in the US, we elect people to make decisions on our behalf. But can you imagine? I told y'all we imagining tonight. And that doesn't mean we can't implement as well. Can you imagine if we didn't just have a representative government, but we had a government where people who are affected by the decisions have more say and are brought into the table and are part of the decision making process beyond casting a ballot? Can you imagine, right? If you came to the table and they're like, okay, the um state has this much money to go towards textbooks this year. What if the teachers were really brought to the table to help make that decision versus somebody handed them a textbook that has nothing to do with the curriculum that they're following, and now they got to make their own lesson plans and they don't have a textbook to go with what they're studying, right? What if they brought them to the table? And it sounds simple, and it sounds like it sounds so simple that it's like this is dumb. But what if we actually implemented that, right? What if we brought the people who are being impacted into the room, into the table, and they actually were part of the decision making process beyond casting a ballot and trusting the people there to make it? If we had a true democracy, right? How could things change? Do y'all think that would impact or make any difference, or you think it would kind of be the same? What are your thoughts on that? Because power and influence is very different. Being able to have the power to make a decision, being able to influence people, and share information with them is very different than just giving them the resource. And I also understand that we're live, so if you do not want to comment, I also understand that as well. um, so I totally get that as well. But this is just imagining. If you just want to think on it on your own without commenting, I completely respect that as well. But this is just one of the things that's also covered in the book. And then he gives us some viewpoints of different types of decision making. Because again, we're talking about collaboration. So that's multiple voices from different entities, different backgrounds, different experiences, different zip codes, different levels and types of work, different industries, different backgrounds. We're talking about people that are totally different across the board. Because if you even look around your neighborhood, people are totally different. So we need different voices different than our own, because our own voice may be our truth, but it may not be the truth of the group. So the other thing, so as we're talking about that, let's talk about it. So we talked about this. We have a direct democracy in the US, right? I mean, we have a representative democracy. So here are three things that were kind of presented in the book as almost like a way that we can work closer to co-creating an economy for all. So co-creating spaces where things are distributed more evenly, co-creating spaces. And I'm not just talking about this in theory. I'm really like challenging all of us to work towards in some way, even if it's just in your neighborhood and your home. And even if it's just us having a mind shift, because that's why I said put on your imagination caps tonight, because it may not be our reality right now, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible, right? For many of our ancestors, there were some things that seemed impossible, and we're living in that space now. Like it was not reality then, but it's reality now, right? Many of us did not have the right to vote. Many of us did not have, women couldn't even get loans or credit cards, at a certain point. But now that's the reality. But it wasn't a reality for like our great grandmothers, some of our grandmothers, depending on your age. There was a point when people didn't have running water or cell phones, but it's reality now. So while we're imagining, these also are things that can be implemented. And I understand that some of these things also for all of us take a mindset shift, because we're so used to certain things, right? Or we what do you call it? The machine, we're so used to certain things working a certain way that it often takes a mindset shift. And we're all in that space. And we're gonna talk about learning and unlearning in a little bit, but I'm gonna try to go through this kind of quickly because I do also understand it's almost 9:40. So listen to these, and I would love to know which one of these three strands, if you could just imagine which one of these three strands do you lean more towards or resonates most with you. So we're going to talk about participation, government, reparative, and economic. So we're going to, participation, democracy, reparative democracy, and then economic. And we'll talk about which one resonates the most with you. So the first one, I promise you, it's not gonna be a lot of verbiage. I'm gonna go through it trying to kind of quick. So we know that we live in a representative democracy, but imagine if we had a participatory democracy where we did preventative work. So there are people who work inside the system where they're making the budgets, right? Talking about blue collar, white collar. We're talking farmers. We're talking Wall Street. We're talking school teachers. We're talking about all these different types of people working inside the system to help make decisions as a collaborative. People working outside the system. So those are the people who they are outside the system, but they work with the system to inform the system about what's going on so that they can make decisions that are preventative. And then there are people who work against the system, right? These are the people who protest and the people who bring the things to light so that something can be done about it, right? So for many of us, we are the ones, because I'm probably in that last group, right? We are the ones that are like, we're not going to stand for this. Somebody's going to have to do something, right? We are the ones who, before this happens, we need these things done, right? Working against the system. None of these are good, bad, better, worse. These are all components that are needed. So participatory, you're actually doing something either inside the system, outside the system, and by system we mean government, or against it, so that change or so that things can happen before, right? Being preventative or preventive. The next one is reparative. So when you think about reparative, we're talking about people who identify, quantify, and redress historical wrong. One example is slavery. There's a whole group of people for years and years and years, decades, that have been working on reparations, right? Reparations. We need you to repair the wrong that you've done. So there's been people who have been working on this reparations documents, but it hasn't been implemented, right? And what this does is cause us to do some unlearning and some sustaining, right? So, for example, if we talk about reparation, it calls us to unlearn things that we may have been taught that aren't true about America's history. But then, on the other hand, while we unlearn, we also have to work together across lines, across zip codes, across, whatever, to also build things that are sustainable. So if we are able to get reparations or a reparations program, what does that look like? How is it done? So we have the idea and we know that a wrong has been done, but we identified it, but we quantified it. We identified it, we quantified what's going on, and now we need this to be addressed. So this has been addressed. How do we do that? Very practical, right? We always talk about practicality. How do we practically make this happen and make it make sense? And how do we implement it moving forward so that it's not just a one and done thing, but it's something that is sustainable throughout time? One, so we can acknowledge that certain things happen, and two, so that we ensure this does not happen again and the wrong is addressed and it is maybe not taken care of, but the right reparation takes place, right? And I've been doing a lot of talking. I want to hear from y'all. So the last one, I'm gonna give you the last one, and then I want to hear which one you kind of identify with, is economic democracy. And I will also say all these are needed. That is, we now have these raw materials, whether it be natural resources, whether it be technology. We have these materials, and now we figure out how do we make these materials work equally, with equity, in cooperation with, across lines, economic lines, across districts, across. And how do we not only do that, but in that process, we bring in people who wouldn't normally be at the table into that process. So we bring in the farmers to the conversation. We bring in the teachers to the conversation. We bring the nurses into the conversation. We bring the janitors into the conversation, not after we come up with the plan and present it and propose it. We bring them as we're thinking and as we're writing and as we're putting things together. These voices need to be part of the making of it, and not of the, hey, this is the proposal we have and we think this is what this group of people need, but we haven't included those groups of people, right? And I think an example of that is, I was teaching a group of high schoolers, and I asked them what they would change about the program that we were in, and they were like, well, I think we should be part of the planning committee, because people are planning stuff and it doesn't necessarily match us, but nobody asked us what we wanted. So it's like we often give people things like, I don't need it, or I don't even qualify for this. But you wouldn't know that because you didn't bring me into your planning. You presented something to me after you put it together without my input, right? It's like somebody giving you a gift and expecting you to love it, but they didn't even ask you what you like, and that has happened to me before. That's probably why I was feeling a little like, you didn't even ask. So out of those three, which one kind of resonates with you the most? Participation, which means you are part of. Which one do you see yourself, or could you imagine yourself being part of? Being a part of the crew that is like, okay, we're going to look out for things and try to prevent things from happening. Would you like to work on the side where you're repairing and sustaining things that have been done wrong, and now you're helping on the side to repair those things? Or would you want to be part of the economic decision making, where you're helping with the budgeting and the distribution of resources, and you're helping even come up with who should be a part of the team? So whose voice is missing, right? Who should be at this table? Have you ever had that thought, or been in a meeting and you're like, man, I wish this type of person, I wish we're making decisions about, and I'm gonna keep going to the government, and I ain't even being shady because I'm just gonna say it. We're discussing Roe versus Wade. Who should be at the table? First of all, we shouldn't be discussing it because the Supreme Court had already decided on it. However, if we're going to discuss Roe versus Wade, if we're going to discuss things that have already been in place, who else should be at this table, right? Whose voice is missing? Who is this going to impact? Right? And should they be at the table? Yes, they should. But somebody has to think we need these people at the table. Rachel said repairing. I think I don't know. Part of me like I want to do repair. The other part, I think I'm gonna be just out there against fighting against. So we got one person repairing. What kind of resonates with you? I know for some of us, you may not even be able to decide, but know that all of these pieces are needed and they are necessary, and they need each of these spaces need multiple types of people. Again, it's across racial lines, across ethnic lines, across social economic status, across background, across region, right? People from the South, from the North, because we live different lives. We just really do. And often we don't think about that. That's not considered. I should say that. I don't think that's always considered. Miss Blunt said she would be on the economic side. And even think about your skills. And we always push holistic. Living an abundant life, living a life that's full, involves every part of you. So not just the spiritual part of you, but how you're able to live your life abundantly, how you're able to live your life freely, how you're able to live your life debt free. All goes back into decisions that are made based on where you live. So you can do a lot, but also government decisions, laws, ordinances, they impact our life and our freedoms. um Ms. Blunt said economic, where we have the power to dream again, right? And one thing that really, and I can't even think of the name of it right now, I'm sorry y'all, because I know I also have to move on. But one of the things I thought about, it was a group of women who were providing funding for Black businesses, and another group of people got them shut down for discrimination. Again, when you look at the economic strand of democracy, if you look at the numbers and just the how it's so skewed on how many Black businesses, Black organizations, or just of color, right? Organizations, people of color organizations that get funding, it is drastically different than our European counterparts, if we could just be honest. So we have a group of people who have created something for Black people so that they are able to get the funding. And we have another group of people, for whatever reason, have decided that that should not be happening. But we have to consider what is the good for all, right? Because you have people who do not always have access to the funding, to or who are denied for whatever reason, whether it's discrimination or not, denied for whatever reason, loans and different things like that. And often, again, that's discrimination because of whatever zip code was put on the application. That's discrimination, whatever it may be. If we were collaborating on this, we may be able to hear a different voice and see why that process was put into place, because there was a group of people who were not at the table and were often getting denied. Thank y'all for answering that. I only have a few quick things, and then we will. So just real quick, because we have about 10 minutes. One of the big things that I want to hear from you with this as well. Miss Rosa said economic allocation as well. Absolutely. I don't think it's always considered how money is spread. Because again, even if you look at the way our tax system is set up, it's kind of crazy that $1 billion companies are not paying. I about to say paying a little bit, or either not paying or paying very little. But we have families that are making 200 and something and above that are paying like crazy amount of taxes, and they're just trying to live, right? It just doesn't make sense. So one of the big things here as well was collaboration as a practice of radical inclusion. So again, we talk about radical inclusion, we talk about building a bridge. So it's not just people that you like and that look like you and that agree with you. Radical inclusion is even inviting people who have opposite viewpoints, people who are from totally different backgrounds, people who view things and you probably won't agree with into the space, right? People who are not your age, people who don't dress like you, people who may have a different faith background or no faith background or spiritual link at all. That radical inclusion means that bigger than me and what I want, I am justice oriented for all, right? Not just for the people I like. Not just for the people who make X amount of money or more. Not just for the people, whatever category not just for the people who fill in the blank. Radical inclusion is I desire justice beyond me, justice beyond my desires. Desire justice, even if, and one of the things I think that happens is, and this is one of the things that I believe is happening now is people try to prevent one group from getting justice because they think it impedes their justice. But me getting a freedom doesn't take away your freedom, right? So radical inclusion is, even if I don't agree with your lifestyle, with your haircut, which whatever, I still believe that we all, just on a basic level of humanity, deserve some type of justice. Right? We all deserve that. And I'm pulling up my notes because it was one other thing that I really wanted to, and that's different talents as well. So that means, just for an example, Miss Blunt and Miss Rosa talked about economic allocation. They may be very good at budgeting, right? And very good at making money stretch, or saying, we can just do this and then we can invest here. They may be very good at that. But that also means that I also invite the person to the table who isn't good with money, because I want them to see this and be exposed to this. And I want to know where they're lacking so I can make sure that they get the resources to learn how to budget, to learn how to, whatever. And if they are lacking in money, why? Is it because they're underpaid? Because if they're underpaid, we need to link up with the preventative people and the reparations people so that we can adjust this thing. Right? So yes, Miss Rosa said radical inclusion has to go beyond accepting differences. Yeah, it's not just about accepting that we're different. It is, we're different, and we can really, there's value in it. So the fact that we're different, I don't just say, okay, you can come because you're different. I'm saying you're different, and that brings value into this space. You're different, and I know that your perspective is going to be different or opposite or whatever from mine, and that's why you need to be here. I value being here. I'm not just like, okay, yeah, I guess you come in here now. It is, you're different, and let's figure out how we can best help one another. You're different, and I want to hear how I can hear you better. Right? You're different, and that is why we need to work together. Right? So I don't just accept it, but I also value it, and I also want to see how we can maximize our differences, as well as how we can improve whatever your situation is as well, not just for my benefit, but for you and other people like you as well. So that is not just acceptance, but value as well. Thank you for saying that. Working together to break down barriers. Yeah, because your barriers and my barriers could be different. But that does not mean that yours don't matter or mine don't matter. It means that we have to figure out how we're going to break down barriers for both of us, all of us, everybody. How do we break them down? Right? And it may seem, I would say this, it may seem far-fetched, but so many things probably seem far-fetched until they were done. Right? So many things seem far-fetched until they were done. And then the next thing, just because we run out of time. With the inclusion. Can't come to agreement with the inclusion. Tell me what you mean by that, Miss Alicia said. Oh, without. I got you. She said you can't come to an agreement without the inclusion. Absolutely, because we start making decisions on someone else's behalf. And if we haven't included them in the conversation, we've really done a disservice for them. Thank you for saying that. The last thing, I think that's the last thing. Yes, the last thing is collab. So collaboration, our Vent Lab, we didn't think about collaboration as a justice oriented space. So again, it's not just about me and what I want. It's about how can we show justice across the board? How can we invite other voices, and how can we transform what's in place, right? So no matter how much money you have, no matter what assets you have, no matter what level of education you have, no matter what side of the tracks you come from, how can you contribute to this space? And contribution is not always tangible. Contribution is the knowledge that you have of the people in the space where you exist. Contribution is your creativity and how you see moving forward. Contribution is how you love on people and programs that can be based on real needs of real people versus us just making things. Y'all ever been somewhere or been in the presence of somebody and they're just doing stuff to say they did it, but it's not really solving a problem? It seemed like maybe it could be good, but they just making stuff up to say, oh, I did this. Like, justice oriented, something being justice oriented is it really actually impacting people's lives, right? So I ain't gonna keep going back to Roe versus Wade, but this is one of the things that popped because we did the debate was last week. It's one of the things that popped up to me. Justice, being justice oriented, would have been to just leave some, like my grandma would say, leave well enough alone. It didn't need to be bothered. The decision was made. So now somebody just doing something is, oh, you know what? We need to reconsider this and maybe change some things. When really we could be working on other things. If you want to talk about women and reproduction and things like that, how about making um, personal products for women more accessible? How about reassessing that? Right? How about getting rid of these pink taxes? How about, like things that actually impact? My godmother works for, or she works with, she's on the board for in Chicago for women, and I think it's Women Empowered. So one of the things they do is they work towards um, equal pay, different things that impact specifically women in the workforce. So it is, sick days and, things like that so that women who are working get to be able to raise their children, get to have access to different things that they need specific to what they need. Like, you know what I'm saying? And one of the things that I really value, because I went to one of the lunches they had, was that they consider the women that they're serving. They are in conversation with the women that they provide services to. They're providing grants and things to women who are trying to impact their community in the local area, right? They're in Chicago, where they're in Illinois. But they're actually working. Okay, you need childcare. What are some issues? You need access to affordable childcare. You need possibly having increased sick days, and you need, okay, your pay needs to be more competitive. How can we speak with legislators? How can we speak with people so that these things can happen versus how can I adjust your rights? It's actually, what do you have going on and how can we impact that in a positive way? Right? That is what justice oriented, that's what being justice oriented is. What do the people I'm serving really need? And we only get to that by inviting them to the table and letting them speak about what they need versus us just making up stuff to give to them and giving them a basket of candy and telling, thank you, here go a pizza party, go home, and my child need food and I need access to childcare. You know what I'm saying? It's just, and it's, to me, I guess I'm just like, because it sounds so simple, but for whatever reason, it gets complicated at a certain level, whether on purpose or not, I don't know, but it gets complicated at a certain level, and I don't understand. And I'll kind of conclude with this, and I want to hear from you all. Again, I want to hear from you all as well. Your takeaways, things that really stood out to you. Again, back to referencing the book, one of the other quotes that really stuck out was, justice work begins with making room. And again, reference back to the book, plenty good room for everyone to participate. So Everyone means everyone. Yes, we need a vote. And speaking of voting, and I said I won't keep doing this. Speaking of voting, we need to vote not just for president. We need to vote midterms. We need to be participating in our local. If while we're in this representative government, if you want things to look a certain way, if you value, certain things, voting is a big deal with that, because people making decisions on your behalf are not the president and the three branches of government on the federal level. It is at your local level. So that is, people are making decisions in your school board, at your city council. That is people deciding where the trash dump is going. That is on the state level. That is your state senators. These are all, these people are making decisions on your behalf. So we often shoot straight to president. There's some steps before you get there. So we also want to make sure, again, collaboration, that we are putting people who have our best interests at heart at every level of government, at every level of decision making, whether it be government or not. We need to make sure that we're putting people, and we're vetting people, and we're asking the questions, and we're showing up, because they are making decisions on our behalf, whether we like them or not. People are putting trash dumps in our neighborhoods, whether we like it or not, right? People are putting landfills and, deciding where hospitals are going to go. These decisions are being made. And I'm not going to get too far on but these decisions are being made. And how much better could it be if we are at the table, or at least right now, we are voting for people who truly have our best interests at heart, versus trying to line their pockets or get clout or get power, whatever the case may be. How much better could it be? And it's not just, we can imagine it, but we can also make it reality. We have changed government before. We have shifted things before. We have overturned and amended the Constitution before. We can do it again. Rachel said, "Yes, ma'am. Every election, the book is on Audible. We'll be listening to it." Yes, tell me what you think about it. Please tell me what you think about it, Rachel. It's really good. But the last thing, again, I said this last week. Both barriers, and this is from the first chapter of the book, both barriers and bright spots are going to exist within co-creating a world enough for all. So we're going to have some barriers. We know that. But there are also so many bright spots and places of opportunity that we often are going to run into as well. And lastly, and I'm going to say this every week, if there's more than one reality, there is more than one embodiment. So reality that we live in now is reality, but we can embody a different reality and create a different reality through our collaboration together. So again, I thank you all tonight. Hey, Miss Tracy, we can achieve it, Miss Rosa. Absolutely. We can achieve it. I believe that wholeheartedly. We can do it. We can make it happen. And it's going to take us coming together, both in collaboration, but also as individuals, making decisions, deciding to go out and do things. It takes us all, and no voice is too small, and no voice is bigger than the next. We gotta, yes, that radical inclusion, yes, economic allocation, radical inclusion, those things are all so important. So I hope y'all enjoyed this conversation tonight. I know we lean real hard into politics, but I think sometimes we just got to do that because it is a part of our real life. And it is a big factor in our real lives, and it is very much impacting our real lives. So thank you all for sharing. Thank you for coming together. Thank you for collaborating with us in the lab tonight, Miss Tracy, Miss Alicia, my mommy, Miss Dorothy, Miss Rosa, Alethea, Rachel, Shop Job Thrifts, Wayne. I saw a couple other people. If I miss you, Tony. If I miss you again, I apologize. Everybody doesn't pop up for whatever reason. So if I missed you, I thank you for coming on. Next week, we'll be continuing with our collaborating series. So we'll be back, episode 25 next week. Cannot wait to see you. In the meantime, you can definitely meet us in the Vent Vestibule. We talk there throughout the week. You can find it on our website. But I will see you next week. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you soon.